Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone, and welcome to the latest Leader Post Rider Rumblings video podcast. I think I got that title right.
And First time for everything.
First time for everything. I don't know what week this is. It's somewhere in the teens. Exactly. I am joined by the incomparable Murray McCormick, wearing black in honor of Chris Jones's erstwhile wardrobe.
I think we both are wearing black today. We're kind of wearing Chris Jones's colors.
And in tune with his football allegiances, Chris Hodges, a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan, and a right-thinking Winnipeg Jets fan, is with us. Erstwhile CTV sportscaster, and now in the exciting field of communications.
I don't know if I have a business card that's large enough for all of that stuff underneath a name like that.
A husband, father,
yes,
hockey dad,
all around good guy.
Rink food connoisseur.
Oh, yeah, funny you mentioned that. Rink Burgers of the Prairies coming out again. If I can use your podcast to plug my by all means, my social media endeavors, traveling around from small town to small town, and while you're there, what better way to pass the time than to sample the fares? And there are some tremendous rink rockets in the province of Saskatchewan. And for those who followed along last year, we got a chance to check out Kalonze and Rollo and various and assorted other small towns throughout the province. Well, Annie's playing hockey again this year, so Rink Burgers of the Prairies will be firing up here in a couple of weeks.
Do you have hamburger soup out there too?
Oh, Milestone does the hamburger soup, or I'm sure there are others.
Yes.
Milestone is a leader in food fare in the small town commissaries.
The Yorkton Terrier Double Burger. I look like this for a reason. The Feral Agency's Arena Double Burger is one of the great food experiences of all time. And once upon a time, the Moose Jaw Civic Center hamburger was so good. And then not anymore. No more Civic Center, no more good hamburgers in Moose Jaw.
I used to go out of my way, when I was the CTV sports guy, I used to go out of my way to do 1 or 2 periods out in Weyburn. So as soon as the 6 o'clock cast would be done, jump in the truck, fire out to Weyburn, go to the Coliseum, catch a couple of periods of the Red Wings game, run into Ronnie Rumble along the way, which of course is always worth the price of admission, and get one of the finest rink burgers in all of the prairies at the Coliseum.
And not for professional sports concession prices, where you're paying like $98 for the bun if you want a hot dog. So good prices too.
Yeah.
Why are we here? Stomach Rumblings. This is because you call the Stomach Rumblings podcast. We're here
there's some good stomachs here to rumble, that's for sure.
We need a wide angle lens for this one.
Hey, I follow along in great anticipation of your food frenzies when you're on the road.
Oh, thank you. I love that. It's a pure pleasure. It's all mine. Too.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
No kale involved.
Going to be starting now. It's kale season.
And now for the bad segue of the week. The Riders certainly provided some food for thought on Sunday, defeating the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 31-23 before 33,350 spectators at Mosaic Stadium.
Nothing wanting from that meal, though.
It was two teams going in different directions, it seems. That was the storyline going in, and I think that's the storyline coming out of it. What were your thoughts initially, Mur?
Once again, trying to figure this team out, you come up short. We kind of thought Winnipeg might be able to bounce back a little bit after their struggles, but I think the Riders got to get full credit for the win. You know, they struggled a bit in the first half, but they came on in the second half with a great defense. Zach Claris played pretty darn well, for where the offense goes. What an amazing defense, a special teams unit. And they've been doing their 3-0 without Daron Carter, because we got to get his mention in early. So
ding,
ding,
on the board.
That's the end of the Daron Carter mentions, but they are 3-0. And soon as that offense catches up, we're going to be talking whole playoff game for sure.
Does the offense need to catch up, though? I mean, the one thing you see about the Riders is it's a standout defense, arguably the best in the league. Special teams has been getting accomplishments done and on the board. They're actually, not only are they winning the field possession, the flipping fields, but in this particular case, they got the touchdown return on the kick. Do you need to have the solid offense to get it done?
I've been banging that drum for several weeks and not with any great rhythm or effectiveness lately. It stands to reason, given that this is the Canadian Football League and a reputedly wide open league, that at some point you're going to have to be able to win a shootout. And it's been disproven so far because the defense puts the Riders in position to win, as do the special teams. And you can have average to below average contributions from that offense and still come out ahead. But I keep looking, perhaps erroneously and perhaps too obstinately, at some point, they are going to need to be able to win the CFL.
There's some sort of 44-41 coming your way.
It's the CFL. There's got to be. And what if that's a big game? And what if they can't win that game with the arsenal that they have at their disposal? There's questions about every team every year. That's the one that is still eating at me, because I don't think there's much to debate about the prowess of the special teams or the defense. It's, can they win with that offense? Can they win while having a Trent Dilfer style mentality?
Did you like the way they kind of closed the deal though on the offensive? That touchdown at Thigpen and that big play to Jordan Williams-Lambert, and then those are two big offensive plays.
Absolutely.
And in the fourth quarter, 2 touchdowns, kind of a rarity around here. So maybe they're coming back. Maybe they're starting to do this stuff. Like, we leave there always kind of, what if ever the offense could do anything? Well, maybe the offense did something there in that game, and they won it for them. So maybe there is something coming on there. Maybe we're going to see some of these. And I just love it how everyone gives up on the Riders in July and August, and then somehow Chris Jones comes out in September wearing green, and he's leading this team that now they're in the talk. There'll be the power rankings, will be up there and all that stuff. And something's changed since this team's changed a lot.
I think the other part too is that when you're talking about effective offenses, it's not necessarily points on the board in as much as in that fourth quarter, the Riders had a couple of sustained drives that ate clock time. How many times have you seen in the past where you get to the fourth quarter and your ineffective offense is so ineffective that it's 2 and out, and that gives the other team the opportunity to either climb back in or take the lead or stretch the lead. Well, the Riders in this particular case this weekend, the Bombers were looking for something to try and get things going, and the Riders the Rider offense never gave it to them. Didn't necessarily score the points that you're looking for, but kept the Bomber offense off the field.
Can a sustained drive lead to sustained success?
Ooh. There's a lead for you.
There's a lead, eh?
Well, even that game in BC where the offense after the second quarter did so little, but late in the game, I think they put together 3 consecutive first downs. They hit an important pass to Naaman Roosevelt, and that didn't result in any points, but it consumed clock and it tilted the field.
For sure.
Is that all they need to ask of this offense? Can you get by with that for the entire year, or is there going to come a point where, let's say, Bo Levi Mitchell gets really hot, as he's likely going to do?
They played all their West Division games though. They played a substantial number of them already.
But let's say you're in a playoff game, and suddenly Bo Levi Mitchell heats up, Mike Riley heats up, the defense has an off day. Can this offense match, fight fire with fire?
What the heck? I'm going to say yes. That's how happy I am this Labor Day week break between games. Last week I would have said no way. Now I think yes. I think there was enough shown by this offense on the weekend that has me kind of optimistic for 1 week, maybe 2. But
Chris, your Bombers?
Yeah.
It's funny. It's amazing the number of times you talked about it off the top, where you got 2 teams that are sort of passing each other in the hallways. They're on their way to different rooms, and it's been like that for a number of years at the Labor Day and the following weekend in Winnipeg. Is that invariably this is when you look at the schedule, all the games are equal in terms of what they're worth in the standings. But the reality is that this home and home set between the Bombers and Riders almost always decides the overall fate and fortune of the respective teams, and it's always very difficult for a team to win twice, particularly in on a short week. There's not a lot of opportunity to inject new things either offensively or defensively. So you've got fresh film, good film that the teams can go off of, and it's difficult to try and to get both wins. And as much as Regina is a hostile environment for the Bombers when they come here, the road is paved in both directions. Winnipeg is no picnic, for the Riders and their fans when they come in. But the reality is, I think you saw enough from the Riders this weekend to suggest that they will take both halves. As much as that pains me as a long-time season ticket holder growing up on the East Side Zoo in the old Winnipeg Stadium, but I don't see enough from the Bombers to give me the indication that they're going to come back with any fantastic outcome their way this weekend.
So who do you think they should start? I'm not saying it's not going to be else by Matt Nichols, but do you think they should make a big change and bring on Strevler?
Well, Strevler's body of work is so limited, and again, you can't really make a fair assessment until you give them a broad spectrum of opportunity. But is this the time of the year where you want to say, okay, Matt Nichols, thanks for everything you did to this point? I mean, the Bombers are still in it. Everything's still very fluid in the division, and even with the possibility and prospect of a crossover. I mean, everything's still very much up for grabs. And I think until you're effectively eliminated mathematically, you got to go with your ace.
You can't make that change now.
No, you can't. Go back 5 weeks, 5 weeks ago, and the troubles that the Riders were having at quarterback, and everyone was, calling for Brandon Bridge, and you got to give him a chance. You got to. Well, as soon as Collaros came back, I mean, Collaros was their ace, and as much as Brandon Bridge's time may come, I think the same might be said for Strevler. I mean, I think he's the future of the organization for the Bombers. I think if Matt Nichols doesn't put together a good stretch down the stretch, that this may very well be the end of his run in Winnipeg, but not this week.
Can we talk a little defense? Because, boy, it's fun to watch.
Isn't it, though?
Isn't that just like, you always think, okay, Charleston Hughes is going to come out of nowhere, and comes out of nowhere to get another sack. 13 sacks before.
And he does it against Stanley Bryant.
I know, he's not, and I was trying to think, I'm trying to think of the sacks, and I was trying to think of who's the great defensive ends, and Charleston Hughes is going to just obliterate all that kind of thought. Ed Gainey's pick, he had 10 last year. I don't think there was one better than the one he had against the Blue Bombers. He climbed the ladder and he got up there and it was such a key moment too when they're trying to think they're kind of come back.
And they looked confused on that play, and he bailed out the Rider defense. They were all pointing and where do we go? What do we do?
Absolutely.
And Ed Gainey just took over that play.
Yeah, and I don't think people really give it enough in terms of its credit for, if he doesn't make that play, if he doesn't make the pick, and the Bombers and the pass is complete, there is nothing but clear sailing ahead. I mean, that was a substantial gain.
A lot of his last year in that position, he broke outside of the ball, and the guy, if he had made the pick, the guy was gone.
Yeah, it's an all or nothing play.
He's kind of that gambling kind of stuff. But if Gainey starts playing like that, playing like he did last year, because even he admitted people have been kind of questioning what he's been doing this year, kind of wondering where he was and that stuff. But when you're the best defensive back on the best receiver, you're not going to get a lot of balls thrown at you.
True.
So the opportunities are fewer for Ed Gainey than they might have been for someone like, I don't know, who Desmond Butler seemed to be. Oh, he's better now.
I mean, it's not like Ed Gainey had been playing badly. And when they were throwing ball, there were a couple of plays where you had to put the ball exactly where it had to be in order to beat Ed Gainey. Sometimes it was just a matter of the throw being, needing to be perfect. And, Ed Gainey had 6 interceptions at this juncture last year. But he'd only had interceptions in 2 games. He had his 10 picks in 6 different games last year. So it wasn't like he was a week-to-week factor when it came to interceptions.
No, and
he's only one game with an interception behind last year's pace.
And he's a streaky player. I mean, in as much as, people are making the comparison that, he had 6 last year, he's only got 1. There's nothing to say that he's not going to get 4 or 5 in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah.
And I know I'm taking over your role as that, but let's talk special teams. Zach Evans, a block punt, barely remembered in that point. Kyran Moore, one of the best returns for Christian Jones goes down, and you think there's a guy they can't do without, and Kyran Moore steps up and gives him a 65-yard touchdown return. Special teams.
And the kick coverage, Kevin Fogg was totally bottled up the entire game.
It's just, so their 2 of their 3 are beyond exemplary. Well, they're championship caliber phases of the game, and the other one's maybe playoff caliber. Can you say that?
You just did.
Yes, I can. I can say whatever I want, can I?
We'll just bleep it out at the end.
Yeah.
What do you like as far as how it sets up this weekend? Do you see just
look at that? Everyone's taking over Rob's job.
A similar setup for the way the game unfolds this weekend?
Well, I'm picking the Rough Riders to win, but I've been wrong on them so consistently this year that might be a bad omen for them. I'm not writing off Winnipeg just yet, having said that, because I've seen this happen too often.
Yeah.
I mean, 1995, the Riders beat Winnipeg 56-4 and then lost 25-24 in Winnipeg the next week. It can be that goofy. So you just, it can turn from one venue to the other.
Andrew Harris can make, if he plays like he did in the first half. I think he was hurt in the second half. I remember when he hurt his shoulder. I think that might have been early in the second half.
And then they put Keenan LaFrance in and he fumbles. Yeah, Andrew Harris getting hurt was pretty key.
Yeah, so I think if Andrew Harris just can play the whole game, I think it's a whole different game. I know the Riders have a great run. It's arguably first or second in the league, but Andrew Harris chewed them up in that first half.
Oh, for sure.
And I love watching Andrew Harris run the ball. I think there's no one, when he's doing it, it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, but he hits the hole hard, and he can make the little shimmy move to the outside if he needs to. Yeah, absolutely.
I look at the Bombers, and I don't think that their receiving core is helping Matt Nichols a great deal. It's not the kind of receiving core that I think they were counting on having. If they get Weston Dressler back, it would give him a receiver that is very reliable, very smart, can find all sorts of holes, can take advantage of mismatches. I just wonder if the Weston Dressler factor will work in the Bombers' favor should he return this weekend.
How many drops did they have? Did you check? There was a lot of them. Like more, and you're going, poor. As much as you can feel sorry for a Bomber on Labor Day game, poor Matt Nichols. No, sorry. But it was, he didn't have, yeah, you're right. That's a very good point, Rob. I commend you on that for noting that.
It's, they've got Darvin Adams, obviously a weapon. Tompkins looked okay. He had the touchdown, but they've had better receiving cores than that in Winnipeg. Nick Dembski wasn't really a factor offensively, notable mostly in special teams.
Well, I find that the Rider receivers do a better job of particularly in zone coverage. They find the seams a little bit better than the Bomber receivers.
Yeah.
Roosevelt, I think, is one of the best at just sort of finding that little, if I'm here, I'm open, but if I'm here, I'm not. And he's I think he's one of the best in the league at finding that little window where when all three of the defenders converge from their zones, no one's going to get to the ball. And it helps that you've got a guy like Caleros.
I go back to that Saturday before the season started when they cut all the veterans with Owens and Bagg and Grant, and you wonder where they're going to go with the receivers. And here they are in September. They got Shaq Evans, they got Jordan Williams-Lambert, they got Kyran Moore, three young guys who have stepped up. And maybe Chris's comment that unfortunately it's not a young man's game anymore. These young guys have stepped up, and it's kind of making that Black Saturday, maybe they knew what they were doing. Is that possible?
They certainly did in the case of Jordan Williams-Lambert. The Riders don't have a touchdown from anyone playing wide receiver this year. 10 games into the season, and they don't have a touchdown from someone lined up at wide receiver. When Duron Carter scored his touchdown, mention number 2, he was playing slot back. How do you not get a touchdown from a wide receiver?
Well, first off, one of the boundary, the field Canadian receiver Josh Sanford doesn't really seem to get the ball every.
Yeah, but there's another one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
How does that not happen? They could have had Shaq Evans for a touchdown a week earlier, and that didn't, or 2 weeks earlier, and that didn't. They just misfired. But they need that receiving core still isn't what it was last year.
Their deep passes are to slot backs down the center of the field, though. So isn't that kind of worked the other way too?
Well, it's all right.
It's a quibble.
Last year they led the league in touchdown passes, and they had 3 1,000-yard receivers. They're not going to have one 1,000-yard receiver this year unless Jordan Williams-Lambert stays on the arc.
What a find, eh? That's just, and it's funny that Jack keeps saying he catches with his hands, and I keep thinking, he catch with his feet? No, but
remember BK Williams?
I know, but I was watching.
He caught with his spleen.
When I was watching the game, and I was watching all the games on the weekend, he is a guy who catches with his hands, and then he moves on. And I think, well, it seems such an obvious thing to do. It's like, do you play hockey with a stick? Yeah, of course. He's just a fun guy to watch, and he's one of those guys. I remember I was in the rookie camp or the mini camp in Bradenton, and him and Kyran Moore stood out. Nick Marshall stood out. And I know people question Chris Jones for having all these hundreds and hundreds of training camps and trial camps. Here's 3 guys that come out of there, Shaq Evans, that have come out of those camps. So regardless, what is 4 guys coming out of those camps make them worthwhile having? I guess they're proving the proofs in the pudding to say that. Isn't that an astute observation?
Putting another foodie reference from William McCormick.
I think it's funny when you talk about absence of touchdowns from the wide receiver. To me, it's and I say this as the token Bomber fan. Ding! I'm keeping my own score tally over here. Is that it's funny to me that 5 weeks ago, the Rider Nation is just clamoring for any sort of level of success. Now you want style points. Now you want it on your terms, right? Like,
that's called the winning streak in Saskatchewan.
Oh, exactly, 3-game winning streak, and now it's like, well, we can get our wide receivers more involved in the offense.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
At some point, you just look at that receiving core, and it's not what it was last year, and arguably it's not what it needs to be for a team to enjoy success in the playoffs. That's their leading pass catcher doesn't have 500 yards, and we're talking 10 games into the year, and he's a rookie. It was an encouraging sign to see Naaman Roosevelt, get involved. That was huge for them, because I don't think Naaman Roosevelt is any less of a receiver than he was 1, 2, or 3 years ago. I just don't think that there was the same ability to get him the ball and the same type of respect shown to other members of the receiving corps that would allow Naaman Roosevelt to escape double coverage. And he had a tremendous game on Sunday. And
how many catches did he make in coverage, like not with guys on him? I was impressed. That's the Naaman Roosevelt. And overlooked. I know you're talking about that. And I know Chris. He's also the leader in the locker room. He's the oldest receiver. Mm-hmm. He's taken on that kind of role. He takes out the guys that go out for dinner together. He organizes things. He's stepped up in that kind of role, which isn't as easy to do until you get the respect of the guys. And he does have the respect. And I think he's showing it on the field, and he's showing it away from the field, which is helping these young receivers adapt to the life in the CFL. They were all out for dinner on Saturday night, the whole group of them. Even Travis Moore, the receiver coach, was there. So it's kind of good to see that kind of camaraderie and closeness amongst the receivers.
I always think
that's why they won.
I always think it's interesting when you have a change at the quarterback position as well too, because the dynamic of kind of the social interactions within the dressing room is going to change, in the sense that Roosevelt may not necessarily be any less of a receiver, but for whatever reason, him and Collaros may not just be on that same kind of level of there's a kindred spirit thing that kind of exists. Every centerman has a favorite left winger. And it has nothing to do with, not necessarily anything to do with skill. It just has to do with just a certain je ne sais quoi, as it were. And it's entirely possible. And I have no empirical evidence one way or the other, but it's entirely possible that, Collaros coming into the room maybe just gets on better with, and I don't say this in a negative way. I'm not at all, but there's just, he might just mesh with Williams Lambert in a different way than he meshes with Roosevelt or any of the other receivers. I was talking to Mike Eden from the safety, and he mentioned on special teams that Zach Collaros has an impact on special teams. I thought was kind of weird, but he says, well, Zach's out, the drives are longer, so they have so many guys that play defense and special teams that get a longer rest. So now Zach's got a sustained offense that gives the special teams a bit of a longer break than going 2 and out and heading back on the covering
field.
A punt and then staying out and playing defense.
And defense. So that's, maybe that's a reason, part of the reason. Like, it's Craig Dickinson. I think we can always say Craig Dickinson's a legitimate genius that's for coaching special teams. That helps too, but maybe Zach being on the field with these sustained drives is helping.
Well, look at the game
teams.
the second game against Calgary here. The Riders scored one offensive touchdown. It was after getting the ball on the 30-yard line thanks to a forced fumble by guess who, Charleston Hughes. But the Riders did put 26 points on the board offensively that day, and 5 of the 6 field goals were after significant drives by the Riders. It wasn't like they were just gifted the ball on the 40, 30-yard line. They did move the ball on those drives, and the offense didn't get touchdowns to show for them, but they did get points and they did devour time. And so that, I think that underlines your point, or the one that Mike Eden was making.
And maybe also comes back to the original topic of discussion, which was, is that enough offensively for this team to win at the ultimate level?
How long can Brett Lather keep it up? That's the question about the sustained drives. Like, he's playing lights out right now. And
how many 43-yard field goals? I want to count 40. It's always 43.
That's his wheelhouse, eh?
Yeah.
They should try convert from the 43.
Yeah. Like, Medlock's one of the money guys around there too, and Calgary's Randy Pretis, but just Blathers. You keep wondering, does he have the confidence? He has the confidence to do it. He has the confidence, right? Does Rider Nation have the confidence in him?
Why shouldn't they?
I know he's proven
great.
He can do it, and
so.
And he's. We mentioned he's a CFL story. He kicked around for a long, long time. Nobody wanted him. Nobody seemed to. He was kicking balls to his family back in Nova Scotia, and Charlie Campagna gets hurt, and this guy steps up. It's just an amazing story, and good for him. You always kind of like those kind of stories in the CFL.
So,
can we talk about the weekend games on the CFL, though? I think we'd be amiss if.
Well, that Calgary-Edmonton game was
the whole weekend was the Montreal winning. I didn't get to watch as much. Even Montreal kicking it off by winning on a Friday night, and just the Calgary game was so much fun. And then the Tiger Cats game, Toronto, that was fun to watch till the end. And it was a good CFL weekend on TV. People talk about, especially with the NFL comes on now, and everyone rags on CFL playing games on Sundays and whatnot. But the CFL put out a product this weekend I think they should be very proud of. And it was fun to watch. It was a good weekend to just waste in front of the TV.
Mm-hmm. This may sound funereal, Chris, but do you have any final thoughts?
Oh, ouch. Well, I mean, I will say again, as the Bomber fan, ding, keeping track on the side of the table, is that if Winnipeg doesn't win, then this is the beginning of the spiral. We may very much be talking Chris Streliever, 2 or 3 weeks down the road, that if they can't put together not only the back-to-back this weekend, but also, winning 2 of their next 3, they are looking at next year territory, I think.
Murr?
Ozark is awesome. The second season was well worth wasting my whole time binge watching. I know it's a Netflix reference, but if you're looking for good entertainment, it's not football. It was a great way to spend the weekend.
Whatever happened to the great sports names? Remember Danny Ozark, the manager, Phillies?
No, I don't remember that. No.
Ozark,
Rob Van Stone's a good sports name, I think.
It's rather geologic, but that befits my age, I guess.
Somebody asked me the best sports nickname, and I still, to this day, stay with Mordecai Three Finger Brown.
Oh, geez.
Which fingers did he have?
He actually lost. He lost part of his index finger and part of his, I think, his middle finger in a threshing accident. And
he was a pitcher.
He was a pitcher, and he was quite good.
I will always like. Well, there's 2. Booby Clark. Booby Clark's a great one. Yeah. And there was Booby Miles from
Friday Night Lights.
And Moody Jackson. I've never heard of another Moody before.
I like Mookie Wilson.
Mookie Wilson's. And there's Mookie Mitchell down the road.
And I had
you had a cat named Mookie
too, yeah. so Mookie will always be a warm spot in our heart for McCormick family.
For Mookie McCormick and Three Fingers, Hodges.
You hold them up, Chris. Show them all.
They're all here. They're all here.
I'm Moody Vanstone, and you may be moody after watching this or enduring it. Thanks for your time. We might do this again tomorrow or next week if you'll still have us. Take care.